Hello and welcome to Screen Junkies Universe. It is the week after the July 4th holiday. We're back live. We're not pre-taped, so everything will be up to date, right? And we won't be chasing the news cycle. Having said that, we are chasing some of the stories that came out over the long weekend because we know there's a lot that happened. Before we get into any of that, I'd like to welcome this amazing panel here to talk about Stranger Things. First of all, the managing editor of Fandom, Eric Goldman.
Hey there, how's it going?
Welcome, Eric. Joe Starr. Everyone knows and loves Joe Starr. Hey, Joe.
Hi.
How's your July 4th?
I honestly think that's going to be what my resume says when I try to move on to the... Like, no actual credits or titles, but...
You know me, you love me.
The people know you are an honest trailer writer.
Horrible.
You're transitioning into producing. You're doing so many things around here.
Cheers.
And here by popular demand, Ed Greer used to be one day a week. It's like you're at the Sands in Vegas and we added extra shows.
Hey, sold out, baby. But thank you guys so much. It's really cool to come in on Mondays because it's like sometimes by Wednesday you guys will have picked the carcass a little bit and I'm just like, damn, man, I had something to say. I had something to say about that.
Well, I hate to say it, but we're pushing a big juicy carcass to the rest of the week because, yes, there was so much that happened over July 4th. We talked about the scuttle casting in Little Mermaid in our pre-tape last week, not realizing that right before we left, when it was too late to shoot or really do anything, they would announce Ariel, the casting for Ariel, Halle Bailey. We'll talk about that. There's a Mulan trailer. There was a Maleficent trailer. There were things that don't involve Disney, which is an increasingly small amount of things.
Doesn't involve Disney?
Movie Pass may have gone upstate to a farm. We'll see. But we've got all that. Don't worry, we're going to address all that stuff. But on July 4th, Independence Day, what better way to celebrate the height of summer than staying inside all day and watching a TV show?
That's what I did.
And that's what I did, and many other people did, because Stranger Things Season 3 dropped on Netflix on July 4th. 8 new episodes. That's been 4 days, and in the way that the world works today, that's plenty of time to watch the whole thing.
It's going to be old news next week.
Old news next week. So we're going to talk about Stranger Things Season 3. Before we get into the spoilers, though, if you're still watching the show and you want to know what we thought about the whole thing for some reason, or you're just you're still on the fence about whether or not to watch the show and you want to hear our reviews, let's get into some quick non-spoiler thoughts, what you guys thought about the season, and then we're going to jump right into the juicy spoiler chat. So first impressions, Ed, generally, what'd you think of the season?
I really liked the fact that obviously this is a television show and they can keep up that aesthetic for, indefinitely, basically. But they did, though. The show changes a bit, but it remains itself, and it just seems like they couldn't have done this same show with this same feel 3 times in a row. They'd have to mess something up, and they haven't. They're just getting a little older. They're doing a little more stuff, and I kind of like the graduation of the concept, both in the bigness of the evil and also the bigness of the kids and their aspirations.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I thought there was a bit of a tone shift. It felt a little funnier and rompier. But at the same time, I felt like it still felt like Stranger Things in that even that sort of felt like a salute to very specific 80s movies and shows. I thought it was a very satisfying tie-off, if that was all we're ever going to get. The effects budget, the way it was shot, it just, everybody sort of came to play. I really, really enjoyed it. But I am also the person who's like, if I like the characters and I like the actors, I'll probably just enjoy the thing. I walked out of Iron Man 2 just being like, I like it when Robert Downey Jr. is Tony Stark. That was kind of my review. So for this, I just sat and went, yeah, I love these kids. I love that guy. Yep.
I was a little nervous in the first couple episodes because when you talked about the tone shift, some of the humor was a little too much for me. It was a little too broad because it was a shift from what we'd seen in the past. It's not like the show was humor-free in the past. It's just this time it was going, a little wackier. But as the season went on, I really dug it. I really thought, it ends on a very satisfying note, even though I don't think it'll be the last season. I think that, this season wrapped up very well, and I think the key is the characters, that you do care about these characters. I think you can see that maybe they're pushing it as far as how many characters they have in this season. They do their best to kind of split them off and give them their own storylines, and sometimes I felt like maybe it's a little too much. But I think the back half of the season is very strong. You could see the increased effects budget. I mean, this is the crown jewel for Netflix. There's a reason this show will go past season 3, I think, and that's because we don't know their ratings, but it's like this is a hit. We know it's a hit. There's merchandise out there to kind of prove it, and you could see they put more money into it. So yeah, I thought it was overall another. I think the first season stands out to me as like something special, but this season's another really good season of a show I really like.
I look forward to the press release coming tomorrow where Netflix says that 40 million households watched Stranger Things.
Right. I think they have to say 60. They have to say like 60 million. If they said the Sex Education and You got 40 million,
that's true. Yeah, no, they've got to adjust the scale a little bit. Largely I'm pretty much on the same page as you guys. I liked the season. I feel like there were some things, and we can go deeper into it with the spoilers, but I think it's still leaning on a few things. I think it's still using the 80s as a crutch when it doesn't need to. I think that they know how to do the setting perfectly. The mall, I thought, was perfect. It established that time. It was a wonderful. I mean, that I hope they were nominated for an Emmy for like set design and set decoration, because that production design on that mall was so good, and just you didn't have to do any of the other references. I felt like lifting literally verbatim lines from a lot of other movies and putting them in the show.
Same issue.
I can do anything I want. I'm the chief of police, and you're a policeman. You have rule. Like they're just lifting lines from movies. Like you don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. There's another character that I will talk to when we get to the spoiler thing that I really had some issues with, but that's
I think
a whole other thing.
that character is.
But generally, it's like you said, I like the characters. I like the actors. It kind of reminds me of Harry Potter in that when you cast kid actors, when they're 10, 11, 12 years old, like you're kind of rolling the dice that as they mature, that they're going to be able to portray that maturity on screen,
and that the audience will want to keep going on the story with them. Yeah,
exactly, because there is a modulation in how you act when you're 12 versus how you act when you're 15 or 16, and it just seems like they came up aces on every role that they cast.
Well, to that point, I think this goes back to my theory, which is a terrible theory, but shows are either I'm about to watch these dudes accomplish this thing every episode, or I'm about to go hang out with these fools every episode.
Yeah.
And Stranger Things walks that line of everybody trying to accomplish something. But in essence, when they sit down, the Demogorgon's over here breaking stuff, and they're sitting down talking about, you know what, got a real crush on Sandy. Yeah, dude, I mean, high school's rough, bro. And we're willing to sit there with them with that during those scenes and not go, but the monster, though.
Yeah.
Because we like these people, and we want to hang out with them, and we want to give them these chances to be a human person. And it's one of the great powers of television.
Yeah, no, the cast, the characters, the performances have always been the best things about that show. They continue to be the best things about the show. And as far as world building, I like where they took the mythology of it. So generally, I think thumbs up from all of us on season 3.
Yeah.
That's about as far as we can go without getting into spoilers. So if you're curious about just like, giving nothing away, what we thought about the season, that's it. I hate to tell you to tune out, but we also don't want to spoil you. But hopefully if you're watching, you've seen the show and you want to get deep down into those spoilers. So that's what we're going to do. So this is your final spoiler warning. Yeah. From here on out, we're going to go full spoilers in 3, 2, 1. All right, now we're doing spoilers. Let's dive deep into it.
All right, well...
all right, Ed, you seem raring to go. I'm going to throw to you first.
First of all, the Demogorgon being the Mind Flayer, rather, being a real estate agent that just wanted to... No, I'm just joking. That's not...
I was like, whoa, where's he going with this?
They pull the Mind Flayer's mask off, and it's like, that's Mr. Farley! Why are you trying to buy up the town? It did have an element of that, though.
It was.
A little bit of that. A little bit of that.
Amusement park owner.
Yeah, a little bit of that. A little bit of Jaws. With the whole, we're going to have a party no matter what. Yeah. We got Russians and monsters and everybody walking around. I really quickly, I think it was, the only thing that strained my credulity really super hard was Erica being able to be away from her mom for like 12, 15 hours, messing with them. That was a lot.
Everyone, all of the kids were basically completely independent of all parents. For 24 to 36 hours.
All I'm saying is when I was Erica's age, and I was probably, a few years later than that, but I was home when the lights came on kid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's in a elevator down into the core of the
we were actually watching, like, way before that. We were watching the first episode where they go up on the hill and they're trying the antenna, and like Dustin's up there with there's 2 or 3 of the other kids that are still left there, and it's dark. It's like straight dark. And I turned to Mara and I was just like, I would be in so much trouble. Like, I don't care if it's summer, if it's like straight up dark, dark, and I am gone, I'm not home. Right. I am in so much trouble.
Yeah.
A little bit of a...
Now, in our circle, there were a few kids whose parents, like, were probably just like, whatever. But I know that if it was me, there were some scenes they just deleted of just a very frustrated dad with a flashlight, like, walking around the subdivision. Like,
because I don't think you ever see their parents.
Well, Joyce is running around with Hopper.
Yeah, no, but like Erica's parents, like we've seen them before. I'm just saying, like, this season they were like, I feel like they're like, if we bring them up, then we have to deal with it. So
yeah.
Yep,
they threw a line in where she was... I thought they did a nice job.
Well, Erica said she was on a sleepover, and that was enough.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be on a sleepover.
Yeah.
And also be in hella danger.
Right.
And they did a good job with Mike's mom, sort of almost meshing the we're bad parents into her character, because she just seems so, like, frustrated with her, station as, like, being married to this schmuck who did not get enough screen time.
No,
he's my favorite part of the first
we got
season.
one good Mike's dad moment on the Ferris wheel.
What I do?
And that's it. Yeah.
He's so funny. But in that moment when Joyce is like, where are the kids? And she's like, I almost tried to bang a lifeguard yesterday. Who knows? They're at one of 4 places. At that point I bought it. Yeah, so as her as like a proxy of all the parents, I was like, okay. But also, yeah, those kids need to check in.
The one that was weirdest to me was Joyce, because I would think that Joyce would be hyper protective of Will,
Right, especially when it's like
of
weird,
Will.
and especially when anything weird is going. They know
Twice
the
it's
supernatural
happened
is
to this
real.
kid.
Right.
Yeah.
They know like this is, and it's directly affected her son twice.
I think the most dramatic license, one of the things for me that I had to give the show the most dramatic license was the idea that Joyce would be, I know that she's on her own adventure,
Right.
but at the same time, like, the kid has been abducted and then infested with the same malevolent entity who's back. Like, I would think at some point she'd be like, you know what, Hopper, I could explore the empty lab with you, but I'm going to go make sure my kid's okay.
I mean,
Because it really seems to be targeting him.
Yeah, it seems like it's got a hard on for my son.
Right.
And I really...
And I know the Duffer Brothers in real life said we're going to lay off on Will this season, but she doesn't know that.
No, she doesn't.
Right,
know
yeah.
that.
Although I did enjoy that. I feel like this was the first season that we got to know Joyce, and not just Joyce reacting to
panic Joyce.
I think that's the price you have to pay.
It's a catch-22.
Yeah.
It's
To
just
get to know
weird because
Joyce
the
better.
character's mostly been at that mode, so now we have to kind of shift and be like, she's gotten over it.
Yeah.
She'll be okay.
Let's talk about Hopper.
I was going to get
So-
into that for the think pieces.
I love David Harbour. I love Hopper. I am curious about whether he's still alive or not.
Yeah.
I suspect that he probably is, but we'll see. But I was like let's say 80-20. I was 80-20 in favor of Hopper, which is like 80% of the time he was great and I loved what David Harbour was doing, and then 20% of the time I'm like, why is he playing every scene at a 27? Like, he almost became a caricature of himself at times.
That was some of the things I was referring to in the early episodes. Like, I get it. They want to be like, okay, it's Hopper as a concerned dad, and Hopper has a like, my daughter is, fooling around with boys. But it was just a little too much. Like, it just shifted. I thought, like, it was just, they wanted it to be, like, wacky and funny, but sometimes I thought it was at the expense of his character because it made him a little too heightened. And I was like, can we scale that back a little bit?
What do you guys think? Heightened Hopper or Happy Hopper?
I don't know. I think one thing we might lose sight of when we look at characters in TV and film is for them to always be the aspirant nature of humanity, which is utterly unrealistic. Just as unrealistic as him being like, whoa, 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 or whatever. They're slipping on banana peels and the Demogorgon's running them down or whatever. Obviously, that would be heightened in another way. But I just feel like a lot of the emotional stuff that he was going through, it just seems like somebody who spun out. You know what I mean? We met him as an alcoholic pill popper. Then he experienced 2 traumatic things where he de facto saved the world or participated in saving the world. And now he has a superhero daughter in a shed making out with dudes all day. I was on pills and drunk already. So, like, what are you talking about? About, oh, I'm unstable. Oh, I'm unstable. When you need a big Russian to get killed, all my instability comes in handy, doesn't it? All this beefcake jerkism comes in handy when it comes time to kill the Demogorgon, doesn't it? And I feel like that's his perspective in the show. Is like, come on, man, how is he supposed to be this aspirant, super good guy? Some of the stuff with Joyce, him having that male, that friend, that friend, ladies, that friend, ladies. Him being the hero of the show and one of the most interesting characters, but he's also a nice guy. That's great, because that's real. You don't get all this gun-toting, willing to run into the darkness and beat up stuff without some bad stuff, too. Rambo has bad dreams. You dig what I'm saying?
Yeah, they called him Fat Rambo.
Fat Rambo.
Because sometimes they
Not
would
even skinny Rambo could make it into the facility.
That's my favorite part.
Sometimes even like the music choices, like they would go for like a little wackier music. So it's just it was like a little thing with the whole approach. I felt where they were like just playing it a little. It's almost like a degree thing.
Yeah.
Well, things with the score are very noticeable.
Yeah.
You're right about that.
And that happens with. I feel like that happens with tough guy characters sometimes. It happened with Tormund, Giantsbane in Game of Thrones, where he's a tough badass.
Oh yeah, when I
becomes
rewatched
comedian.
that show to see what he was when he was first introduced, it was like, oh wow.
Or very noticeably, Grimlock in Transformers Generation 1 is a brutal world murdering badass, and then in the movie, hilarious.
Well, that's what they're doing it with Jason Statham right now, which was you introduce this guy as a complete badass in Fast and Furious, but then over time, I guess because it's kind of boring if somebody's just like.
But it's.
I would love if the Duffer Brothers, by the way, said that Grimlock was an influence on Hopper's character trajectory.
That would I mean,
it would
literally
work.
be
It'd be on
brand.
Right.
It'd definitely be on brand.
I think. It's interesting, right? It reminds me, the discussion about Hopper reminds me a little bit of the discussion around Thor in Endgame, where we are exploring trauma and we're doing it comedically. And does that land? Does that make him ridiculous? Does it work? Because to me, he's gone through those things. We met him as this broken down alcoholic, and then his letter at the end of the season, I think, really puts a bow on where his character's at, where he's like, I shut everything out. And then you started putting cracks in the walls. And when you come out of trauma, when you come out of a depression that deep, a lot of the time, it's not incremental. It's I go from feeling nothing to I'm feeling everything, and I'm feeling it a lot, and the sun's always bright, and so I think that's how they were trying to play him this season, but I also think they were trying to explore it similarly to how they tried to explore Thor with Endgame as laughs.
Right, and as one last point, I think throughout the series, maybe this is me reading too much into it, but if he feels more at home getting beat up in the dark in strange places, fighting strange monsters, than sitting in the room with her, talking to her about anything, talking to her about life, talking to her about like, oh, you spend so much time with Mike, all that, that's scarier than a mind flayer to him. And it seems to be very well communicated throughout the show with his discomfort.
So let's talk about the monsters and really just the horror elements of the show. Body horror. There's always been a little bit of body horror, but this really amps up into.
It was funny because I saw the season before a friend of mine, and he texted me and said, "Oh, my wife does not like real gore or horror, but she likes the character of Stranger Things. But I saw you tweet that this was a gorier season. Should she watch it?" I'm like, I don't know, dude. How will she feel about dozens of exploding rats in the first episode? He's like, okay, not for her. So I'm a big fan of that sort of thing, and also, Stranger Things aesthetic. I mean, it is a show that is, I guess I would still say a horror show at its core as far as what is the genre of the show, and it's certainly with the Stephen King influence. It was interesting to see them lean more into it this season, but I certainly enjoyed that. That's where my mind works, though. So I was curious if some people would see it as a turnoff that it went that. Like, there are exploding people merging together into a mass of exploding people mixed with exploded rats. Like, what they're fighting is really disgusting if you think about it.
Yeah, it really is.
How do they explain logically what happened to those 40 people who not only are dead but have disappeared from the face of the earth?
Right.
Oh yeah, they're just dead.
They're gone.
That's why I did love. I did appreciate that in this one. It was finally like, okay, cat's out of the bag. With the action news report.
This town, something is happening.
Yeah, like something really. I was honestly. I guess I was surprised. I was thinking that the ultimate pullback of the curtain was going to be the Mind Flayer charging into the fair. When she was like, the trees are moving, I was like, here we go.
Dark.
Yeah. Here we go. And then it was like, oh, it's going the other way. That's weird. Because I thought that was going to be the big, here's what's actually going on in Hawkins moment.
Yeah.
And Mike's dad was going to say something amazing.
This is his moment. It's right there.
He's just like, it's Chinatown, Mike. Right at the end, he's on the Ferris wheel. But yeah, I felt like what's interesting about it is I would really hope that throughout the series they try to keep with the aesthetic of we're in 2019 watching the secret adventures of a cabal of youthful adventurers that have this say adventure one more time. Say adventure one more time. They're having this
questing.
Yeah, they're questing. Right. And that was the whole point of it, wasn't it? From the get-go. And they're finally going on a big quest. I predict in the next season that they're going to go to Russia. The show kind of ends up in Russia. They're going to find some goofy-ass way for almost everybody to go to damn Russia.
School trip.
Yeah. Far from home.
Yeah.
I predict something of that nature. At least half of them end up going to Russia to get down to the nitty-gritty of but I don't know. This thing, I don't know if it holds together if you're really looking at it with a fine-tooth comb.
All right, so let's talk about references. Because as I mentioned, I feel like I understand the first season when you're establishing the aesthetic, you have to go a little heavy on the place markers because it's like, it's the 80s and and you're also struggling to connect to an audience. And that's let's be honest, cheap way to connect to an audience by just showcasing things that they already like. But I felt with this season, they almost had more references in this season than the last one. And a lot of them, I'm like, I don't need, one that worked for me was, and maybe it's because I'm a box office nerd, but Back to the Future did actually open on July 3rd, 1985. So it's very accurate that they would have had a full theater of people. I know some people say, why is there a packed theater on July 4th? It's because that was Back to the Future's opening weekend.
Right.
That makes sense. In the sense of the story and the context of the story, that reference makes sense, even though maybe putting the score underneath the later scene was a little a shade too much. But that makes sense in the shape of the story. But the idea of just, like I said, the quoting of the lines verbatim, the one that really did me in was I get it. This Russian dude is supposed to be the Terminator. I understand it. You don't have to put him in the fingerless gloves. They cast a guy that looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yeah. He had the same haircut, but ultimately he was just a goon.
Someone actually mentions Arnold.
Yes.
They actually reference Arnold by name. Yeah, it just seemed like a lot.
He was really just a goon. At the end of the day, he's just another guy that Hopper has to beat up. He was a boss. But
what if he had been a robot?
That's kind of what I was thinking. Just make him a cyborg. That was sometimes it's you don't need that. You already have me. I love your show. I love the characters. I like the story. It's making me backpedal now and question how much I actually do love it.
I mean, I'd be a hypocrite sending my Gremlin shirt if I said I didn't enjoy some 80s references. But yeah, it's weird that it operates on multiple levels because it's a show set in the 80s and the characters go to movies and TV shows that we know. They're fans of things that we know. It also has story elements influenced by things we know. But then this season, sometimes it was one step too far when, the quoting Die Hard thing. It's just it just feels like a weird extra thing that this guy is quoting a movie that's not out yet. So it's just we're just referencing this movie
I missed all these lines. I don't know how you guys have better ears for it today.
Jaws, I could get that maybe Hopper loves Jaws because it's one of the few movies that's about a police chief.
Yeah.
And so he might say, I could do the chief of police as a reference to Jaws. Okay. But the idea of quoting Die Hard, a movie that has not yet come out.
Yeah, it's 3 years away. So it's just a weird thing where it's I think that you can't take the 80s references out of Stranger Things, and nor would I want them to take it out completely, but it's just I almost feel maybe they need to scale back and not have it operate on so many weird levels. They like these movies, they're influenced by these movies in the story, but then they're also going to quote these movies whether they already exist or not, in this reality.
But I just think they can do it in such it made sense in the last season for them to dress up like Ghostbusters because that was the year the Ghostbusters came out. It was a big movie of the summer. Yes, the kids would dress up like Ghostbusters. The mall makes sense. All that stuff makes sense. It's more just you already have done it so well and can weave it into your story, so you don't need that extra stuff.
Big needle drop budget too.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
That's where the
yeah.
$3 billion or $30 billion from Netflix has gone. Is the music budget for this show?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
But also, it's funny to see on a rights clearance issue. It's like there's nothing shown visually that's actually Disney owned. Of course, they reference except for the Star Wars toys, and it's no, I don't even think we see Star Wars toys in this season.
No.
So it's like there's nothing seen visually. They can mention it, but it's like, oh, they obviously did a big clearance deal with Universal because there's Back to the Future, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Woody Woodpecker. So it's like that one they got clearance on.
We didn't get the mouse.
The product placement dollars obviously also came flowing in.
Oh,
this
yeah,
season.
yeah.
And Burger King.
Tostitos
New
flowing
Coke?
in like
Yeah.
a endless bag of
pretty-
Tostitos.
it's pretty crazy. Coke,
No, it's like
Tostitos.
they use a
Coke?
flashback to when she previously had a
Yes,
Coke.
exactly.
Yeah. It's like we will show the transition of this story through Coke. You know?
You could feel that product placement money coming in. Speaking of needle drop moments, one thing that I think some people loved, some people didn't like as much, and then some people are just in a weird middle ground on. We had a musical number in the season finale.
We did.
Really a full rendition, beginning to end of the never-ending story. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I guess I enjoyed it overall. I mean, it was a fun thing to. I like when there are things they pull out, or I mean, Neverending Story isn't obscure. It's more niche, right? It's not like Back to the Future. It's like everyone won't know it. For a lot of, especially if you're like, probably like a 15-year-old fan of Stranger Things, you've never heard of this movie, and now you're going to be looking it up, And I kind of enjoy that aspect of it. It was a little self-indulgent to have it be like this big, full musical number. Like if he just like hummed a little bit of it, but it turned into like, no, like we're going to do split screen. Like this is a moment of the show. So maybe the scaling back thing,
I am honestly curious if part of Gatton's contract negotiation, aside from wanting to do a hilarious prank show where he takes jobs away from people, was that because the kid sings like that. That's his thing.
Talk about a horror show.
He's a singer.
He is.
He's a great singer. But I honestly wonder if they were like, if you want Gatton back, he sings a song, a whole song.
You figure it out.
Yeah,
But I also think they probably hear the fan. Like that's the kind of thing that a bunch of fans are probably tweeting. Like they need to have him sing on the show. And they did.
I had just enough goodwill because I was so excited that Susie was revealed.
Right.
Yeah.
I just instantly loved her and was like, yay, it's Susie! She's perfect. So I had just enough goodwill that Susie had cranked in that I was like, and we're singing. Cool. Okay.
Right.
I might have shot it a little differently. It's a cheap move, but even just some contrast with like maybe literally have Joyce and Hopper in a firefight with some Russians while they're doing it, and like put some of the worst of what's going on contrasted with the dulcet tones of Gatton's doing a Neverending Story duet. But I had like just enough goodwill to go.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think it was the same
this.
thing. Like they just got away with it for me.
Yeah.
Ed, Never-Ending Story. Where'd you fall?
I mean, I think there's a lot of moments in there that echo that sort of thing of like, how can this be happening when this other thing is happening? Like, when Billy and Elle are talking under the Mind Flayer as it's being distracted by fireworks, it was so loud and so bright until they had to have this heart to heart, and then all the sound drops out and it's a Merchant Ivory picture, and there's some cheesecloth over the, you know what I mean? And then she was quite pretty. You were happy. All that stuff, So I just think people pick out moments like that because they're huge in they're distracting and how ridiculous they are. But the thing is chock full of those. It's chock just to the brim, and it's part and parcel of it. Because what I feel is these are children, and children's concerns should always take precedence. You want the number? Sing the song. I'm in Canada. I don't see these mind flares and all this jazz. You sing the song. He has to sing the song because he's a child. He's a child talking to another child, and they're doing child rules while all this major, horrific, real life terror is going on. We are restricted to the child rules because our protagonists are children. I think people who don't like that moment virulently don't like being reminded of that.
I think I was very split on it. I think the thing that tipped me over the edge was the end where they're just making fun of him for it mercilessly. Like, that's the truth. That's what would have happened.
No matter what circumstance,
you would have been made fun of for the rest of your life. Like, I promise
Even though you helped save the world again.
When they show up for their 20-year high school reunion, you're like, hey, what's up? Yeah, what's up, Artax? Hey, man, will never live that down. So I hope that that's a running thing where he never gets to ever forget that he's saying Never-Ending Story.
It's a never-ending story.
It is a never-ending story. All right, before we go into what's in the future and talk about all the cliffhangers, let's just run through the characters because they did with this season a little bit what they did with last season, where they split them off into groups for most of the season, and then they bring them together and then they split them back off. So we talked about Joyce and Hopper off doing their adventures and attempted romance. But we'll talk about Hopper, and that's a bigger thing. Let's talk about the kids, how they split everybody apart. We've got, of course, Steve Harrington.
Yeah.
Now
The best.
a spy, kind of a spy, working at Scoops Ahoy.
Yeah.
Robin, a new face.
Except not a new face because she's a perfect amalgam of her parents.
Well,
Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman.
Yeah.
I was like, wow. It's like those digital things of what your kid will look like. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
This is Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman's kid.
What do we think about Robin?
I really enjoyed her as an addition. I thought they had really good chemistry. I think you needed a new character that's like, I don't know what's happening. Like you sort of still need not an audience surrogate at this point, but at least someone who's kind of a Greek chorus of pointing at everything and going, what?
Yeah.
There's a what under the where? I felt like you needed the character. I thought her twist was really, really well done. It was a really nice subverting of expectations of like the 16 Candles Molly Ringwald.
Yeah.
Like I was so obsessed with you, and I thought they zagged from that zig really, really well. I thought that was a great moment of where he, and not to give Steve Harrington like a big home run arc like at the expense of hers, because I thought her character was really, really strong, but I think it shows how far the Steve Harrington character has come. That and again, I love that character. I love moments where, like Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad, where they're like, he was supposed to be a kind of a nothing, and then just the actor brought so much that we just kept adding more Steve Harrington.
Because he's a washout.
Yeah, he's a total washout,
which I like.
Yeah, now he's graduating high school and nothing's happening for him.
The high school girls that he was, the king of the high school 2 years ago, like they're laughing at him. Now,
Yeah.
right? He's a joke.
But I love that he's able to just sort of in that moment be like, just thinking, okay, I've shifted gears. You're probably my best friend. You know, like I thought that was a really great moment in the stalls. Also underscored by being still stoned on truth serum. Was fun. I thought she was really solid. I liked Ethan Hawke's supportive dad tweets about her as the show dropped. He was just like, she's amazing.
My
Expect
daughter,
more.
Maya.
Yes.
I also like Stephen Robin having the version of Honest Trailers that would have existed if the internet was around in 1985 about Back to the Future. Like, why is it called Back to the Future? He's got to go back. It's in 1955. And it's like,
chug water.
So this mom just tried to bang it. Like, that's things never change.
Yeah.
Because that's pretty much what we're still doing 30 years.
And they were on drugs and came in the middle. So.
Yeah. Also true. Not surprising that they didn't understand
not
it.
the best way to enter.
But I love too that everything that has happened in the previous shows has directly affected where Steve Harrington is. Like, he's like we said, he's a total washout. Because the arc of the show has taken his eye off the prize of being the most popular guy at school, and now he's just sort of this guy that works at the ice cream shop. His best friends are children, and that's weird, But I love that the idea that Hawkins doesn't know its own dark, dirty secret means that the guy who used to be the prom king now scoops ice cream and is friends with children, and everyone probably looks at him like, what's this dude's deal? And why is he remember when he was just a badass and now he's that science kid's friend?
Like, why? And again, it's like the Hopper point. It's like everybody's point. It's like, why did this dude? Why was going to college not interesting to this poor kid with great hair? Could it be because he already saved the world? Could it be because he already participated in saving us from demons and is now really traumatized and doesn't know
how do you prep for your SATs after that?
Right. How to prep for the rest of life after something like that.
Yeah, I think Steve is the best character on the show. It really is amazing to see where he started at the beginning. It's just like the douchebag. And then even by the end of the first season, of course, they subverted that. But yeah, they've leaned into it because they should. He's great. The actor's great. Character's great. And I loved Robin. I thought Maya Hawke, who I'd not seen before, Besides being very distracted by her looking like her parents, she was excellent, and I really liked the character. It's a funny inclusion to the show, and I really felt that it worked really well. It's funny, like right before we started recording, I glanced at a random person on the internet who was like, "There's no point in her being gay. It's just thrown in there." I'm like, well, first of all, if nothing else, I do think it's just a great thing, like you mentioned about subverting expectations, not going in a show that we say references 80s stuff all the time. The obvious thing would be like, they're from different social groups in high school, and now they find each other. It's very John Hughesian, but that was just, first, on a surface level, it was nice to subvert that, especially for Steve, because it's like, no, it's okay. He doesn't need to be rewarded with a new girlfriend at this point.
Yes.
It's really cool that he found a best friend. Dustin's great, but he's also a kid. This guy needs someone, a peer, and so their dynamic was great. And then she was just a strong character on her own. So I thought, that was one of my Scoop Troop in general. But then Robin and Steve were
the
a great part of the
little
season.
sister again. She stole the show for me in season
Erica,
2.
right?
Yeah,
Erica
Erica.
was so funny.
Joins them as
I thought if we're sticking to Scoop Troop, I thought she was great.
Yeah, and if we're going to talk about the things that I was heartened by towards the end of the series was I really liked them kind of making her come to Dustin specifically, making her come to terms with her own nerddom.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely a moment that a lot of the so-called cool kids had. I'm not going to pretend like I was ever a cool kid, but I definitely was on the path of being like, yeah, man, that comic books are cool or whatever. It wasn't about to be a totem that I carried with me my whole life. And there was definitely this point where you go, well, you am what you am, and that's all that you am.
Oh yeah, I wish I had a Dustin that was like,
you're
a nerd.
Here's a D&D starter set. It's all good. You're fine. You don't need.
And I like that, acknowledging that even in that time frame, because a lot of times people, with these different aspects of representation, people pretend that LGBTQ people and all other sorts of people just got into comic books or just got into this pop culture stuff yesterday. No.
Yeah.
They've been there this whole time.
Right.
And they're, you just got to turn the light on them. They've been there the whole time.
Her being gay isn't like to respond to that tweet. It's like it's not like Die Hard. The Die Hard line where, wait, there weren't gay people in 1985.
Everyone knows gay people didn't exist until 1992.
Hello.
Or black girls that play D&D.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. It's just like, I think things like this show can very subtly and nicely. Her sexuality did not stop the mind flayer. You know what I mean? It wasn't that. So yeah, just let these people be people. Again, going back to the Hopper point though, I've seen a bunch of think pieces about Hopper being kind of a jerk and kind of being a nice guy in that mean way, the nice guy in that way that we all know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I just think it's realistic. So many of the characters had realistic edges. Even Dustin going like, my girlfriend is hotter than Phoebe Cates. And you see this child, and you flash back to when you were a kid, and you used to look at a girl in your class or whatever, and it was like
She's
lit
perfect.
differently, and it was so perfect. I just love that. I love stuff like that. Again, maybe I'm a sucker for us getting reminded over and over again that these are kids who are in such proximity to real mortal danger.
Let's jump through a few other characters super quick. Our favorite Cub reporters, Nancy and Jonathan, really just sort of driving the exposition, I think, for a lot of the season.
If there is a character without a purpose at this point, it's Jonathan, especially. It's like watching it, I was like, man, you could do this storyline with just Nancy. And it's weird how Jonathan is just kind of there at this point. Like they really his biggest character trait this season was like, don't walk in when he's developing photos. It was not like a lot else going on with Jonathan.
Well,
and it almost feels like maybe it's time to
marginalized.
write out this character just because I'm not sure what his function is.
I mean,
in the
it was
show
definitely
anymore.
his role was to just tell her to keep going.
Right.
Keep at it.
Yeah, which could have been someone else.
Yeah, it's like I was trying to think about was there a way to connect her to one of the other characters at that point, or introduce someone new? I also have to say, like, one of my least favorite parts of the season was not the idea that she was trying to make it as a reporter and working with a bunch of sexist a-holes. They were so broad, those guys, like the Jake Busey and those guys. It was so that one the big dude is just like like it was just like, take it down a notch, guys.
Yeah.
I completely believe that she'd be stuck in this situation with guys not respecting her and listening to her, but you're so over the top. Like that was actually one of my least favorite things. Was every time
I'm
I got to
torn
those
because I
guys.
have worked in enough like real estate offices where I'm like, check. Yep.
Yeah, I definitely seen. I worked at a place where they sold cars, and it was kind of like that. But I get what you're saying. It's just like, why don't you do a story about sandwiches? They were like almost there, and it's like that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I want to talk about a character and an actor, Noah Schnapp, who is never. He should be. I think it's because for all of season 1, Will was gone and off camera. So I don't think Will is ever really counted as part of the core group, even though he's just as much a part of the core group. But Noah Schnapp is number 1, really good in this season. And number 2, Will, I think. I like the fact that they have taken the character in the same kind of way that it feels like he is in the show, which is that because he has gone through these traumatic things, he's apart from everybody. He's behind everybody as far as like they had all this time to develop relationships and they went on a great adventure with Eleven that he didn't get to go on because he was trapped in the Upside Down.
And he's stuck still
He's
little
stuck,
bit.
and everyone else is moving on, and they can't understand why he doesn't just move on with them. And he's just like, you don't I didn't get to do all these things.
Right.
I was inhabited by something. I was trapped somewhere. I like that they sort of just the show doesn't know what to do with Will, but in a good way.
Yeah, no.
If there was one thing I would change slightly, I think I might have involved Will more with Dustin and Steve's storyline so that it could be all the Arrested Development guys who aren't.
And also, I think that would be a different energy for Will.
Let him bounce off somebody
to
different.
let him
That's
be
interesting.
a part of doing something because he runs around in his little shorts and looks sad, and he's very good at doing
Unfortunate
that.
shorts. If I would be very
and a haircut. Have you seen Noah's haircut in real life? It's like, I hope he gets to come back, which is great. He needs to come back next season.
Yeah, he looked like Prince Valiant at volleyball camp.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's weird.
I know there's historical accuracy, but still, I would be like, come on.
It was most unfortunate.
There were regular shorts that existed in 1985.
And they all had unfortunate shorts, though. I mean, everybody else just sort of hit it by, hey, put a girl on your lap and hide your shorts.
They leaned very much into
That's
the
the trailer
idea
title,
that
by
there
the way.
were shorts. Unfortunate shorts.
Unfortunate.
Dustin's were from camp. They made a little more sense.
Right. So yeah, all I'm saying is I would put him with the people who are more into Arrested Development and maybe have the Getting Girls crew have to go off on their own like double date horrific adventure together. I think that might have added a little energy to what Will got to do over the course of the show.
Or even pair him with swap out his brother with Will. And have him in that pairing. I don't know. Anybody. I do like the idea of giving him some different energy.
Johnny Scoop Troop.
I hope Will does get to finally fully integrate.
And if it is these kids that stick around next season, because I am not to jump ahead, but I am curious if this is the close of a first volume.
Sure.
Because it very well could easily be, and then maybe some elements trickle into a new volume 2.
That would be very brave.
They could franchise build here.
Well, that's what I'm curious about, because I don't know necessarily what they talked about. Hey, we'll get together at Christmas and stuff like that. But with a lot of the characters, I'm like, I don't know what else you need to do with them.
We split up Mike and 11. We haven't really talked about 11 much.
Although I have one more thought on Will.
Sorry. Sorry, go ahead.
Just that, I agree with you that actor's very good at getting to show more than ever, and then I really like that thing with the character, and also it's really interesting because it's like there's these questions like, oh, is Will gay? And I like that it right now it almost doesn't matter, like he could be, but first of all he's at an age where he doesn't need to know for sure, but it's all wrapped up in like what we were saying with the character and everything he's gone through, and the fact that he's just not ready to like move on from like all of them gathering around to play D&D and stuff. He's like, hey, this has been really... Can't we keep doing this?
That was the last time everything was normal.
Right. And there could be a million reasons for that, and it could involve his sexuality, but it certainly has to involve the things he's gone through on this show we've seen. And I like that it doesn't need to be like one thing. It's just like, no, this is a character because there's a million reasons that kids are like that are like, hey, I'd like to keep being a kid while everyone else is kind
I've
of
always been
moving on
fascinated,
different.
too, with the idea of like... because everyone knows I very much love the 80s and 90s genre of kids in peril because they're in a thing they're not supposed to be in. How screwed up is like the Three Ninjas in their early 20s are going to be so messed up, and they fought drug dealers on a yacht. Like that,
like that video
leave you.
Macaulay Culkin did is like Kevin McAllister now.
Yeah,
He's like, just deranged.
And I like that we got to see that with Will.
Yeah.
Like he was in an alternate hell dimension.
Then he was possessed.
And then he was possessed, and like, yeah, that kid's messed up now. Whether it's, and I'm glad that they didn't play it as like there's a darkness inside Will now. It's like no, now Will just has like no sense of self. He's behind developmentally. I thought that was a really smart move.
We haven't mentioned 11 much. Mike and 11 now split up.
Yep.
Young love torn asunder. I continue to love both Millie Bobby Brown and Finn Wolfhard, which is, my God, what a name.
What name?
Wolfhard.
can't
Although
help
Sadie
but-
Sink is also a strong name.
Sadie Sink is a good
Yep,
name. They actually
yep.
have a lot of very strong actual names in
Right,
this
yeah,
cast.
yeah.
Even Millie Bobby Brown. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
these sound like fictional
Yep.
names, but they're
They
actual
do.
people.
Stan Lee named everybody.
Yeah, that was his final gift to us. Was naming the Stranger Things cast.
But yeah, I feel like this was 11 certainly had a lot to do with this season, but I also feel like it was less 11 centric than the
Yeah.
other two, which I'm okay with as much as I love the character.
There was a Twitter conversation last night into this morning that Alan Sepinwall, TV reporter at Rolling Stone, and our friend Zach Stentz was having about, and this came up about it, about how it's a little interesting that Eleven, who is still kind of like the poster, for this show, she was a little more like part of the ensemble. It's not like she didn't have anything to do, but she was not as much the focal point this season. But I feel like when you're in season 3, you can mix things up like that.
And just the realities of the fact
Yeah.
that they probably had a little less time
Right,
and a
yeah.
harder time scheduling both Finn Wolfhard and Millie Bobby
Yeah,
That's
Brown
true.
to
They are
shoot
doing the big
because-
movies, the big Warner Brothers
Yeah. Nice.
or monster movies.
Yeah.
Need
Yeah.
them.
And
yeah.
the Duffers did mention, it was you can't. Now we've done 2 seasons where everything's wrapped up by 11 being able to go ha.
Yeah.
And so what do you do if you don't want to do that
Right.
again? I think the one thing I really found myself enjoying early on was similarly to Will. She's never gonna be normal. Like she is also a very scarred, screwed up kid that is going to be a little bit behind in terms of how she talks and communicates and stuff like that. And I thought it was really kind of cool that like, nope, she's still not just like talking in complete conversation. She's still going back to things like friends don't lie and stuff like that, which I thought was really interesting. And I think moving forward, if they are still going to focus on the kids moving forward, that will continue to be a challenging thing to write 11. Like this is a kid who was a living weapon, if by the time she's 10 or I don't know, how old were the kids actually in the show? In this 12?
By this time they're
began?
like, they're,
Yeah.
I think
like
12-ish.
10 or 11
Yeah,
or
11 or 12.
And by the time she hits like her sweet 16 and she's just like, oh my God, that'll be weird. So I think it's an interesting line writing her.
It'll be. Yeah.
Oh, so no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it'll be interesting to see how they deal with her not understanding idiom, like the idioms that she does get. Like I dump your ass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The ones that she does get versus the ones she doesn't get. You know what I'm saying? Not to get too Yakov Smirnoff about it.
Sure, but no, I think that'll be really fun, especially like Newtown. I think that'll be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Wherever they send 11. And I will say maybe it's just a sign of me relating more to the adults on the show, but I loved Mike was being such a punk to Hopper, and I so loved that instead of giving him a nice talk, Hopper took him out in the truck and scared the shit out of him.
Yeah, no, it's great.
But see, again, that's
to
what
be
I'm
honest.
talking about. Real. That's real. See, you don't want
Yeah.
your heroes to act like
Yeah.
that, but guess what? A lot of your heroes act like that. Deal with it.
Kids
Yeah.
turn into jerks, dude. Like, as they get older,
It's not PC to scare kids anymore, and I think it's a big problem with society.
Why
Well, it's like I said about
boomer things.
Boomer thoughts.
it's like I said. I think I talked about Toy Story 4 and the ventriloquist dummy. Sometimes kids just need to be terrified. This is sort of like a rite of passage. That's what this show is literally about.
It's terrifying children. Yeah,
Perhaps
yeah, yeah, yeah.
fittingly, before we talk about the dear departed Billy and Hopper and what happens next for the show, this is perhaps fitting. Lucas and Max continue to be characters on the show. I feel like they were sort of the weird, considering that Max's brother was sort of the for the first half,
and Lucas's sister had a lot to do. Their siblings were much more focused than they were.
I do feel like those are the two characters that were just by necessity sort of pushed to we're part of the group too.
It's the problem of having too many characters, and at least I still think that they can like pop more than Jonathan, to keep harping on it. I think Jonathan's just like a duller character, so it's like Lucas and Max can have like a funny line, and you're like, I like them.
Well,
but they didn't have their own.
I think they could have leaned in more, because I also like the idea, and it's also very real, of being like, hey man, I've had a girlfriend for 3 months, longer than you. Let me lay down some knowledge. Like that's real. Like I remember being a kid and some kid just being like, I've kissed one girl. Everyone sit.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you could have pushed that a little more, leaned into it. And I did like the dynamic of not taking for granted that as of season 2, like, oh yeah, all of them are thick as thieves now. Like that we saw Max reach out and be like, you need a friend that's a girl.
Right.
In this one, as opposed to doing all of that development off camera.
I mean,
that's cool, but
Will's older brother is there to keep Nancy alive. That's his job. Right,
he's a Nancy Shield.
Right, and he's a Nancy Shield, and Lucas and Max are like, yo, we would be so normal and so cool if we didn't hang out with you dorks and all this weird stuff is going on. Like they're right. They're I think they're supposed to be a little bit, now they've transitioned almost into the audience surrogacy that Robin kind of was in. It was almost like, I'm down with you, but they have obviously more knowledge of the situation, but they're kind of like, boy, we'd just love to go canoodle. You know, we just love to go canoodle, and we got, all right, I guess I'll get these bombs. You know, they're there for that sort of stuff, but also do that. You just reflect on how weird it is, because Mike and everybody are so in it. They're so in it. You have to have somebody standing on the side going like, this is weird. Yeah. You know, when I my first forays into screenwriting, I would never write anybody to go, boy, you're a hella heroic. That was a crazy flip. Boy, you jumped through that thing. Those characters are super necessary.
But that's why everyone said, like, the Han Solo missing from the prequels, like that, a surrogate for Han Solo. Like when everyone is like, this is how it works, and there's no one to be like, this is crazy, or I don't believe this. It can sometimes be kind of hard to sell that to the audience.
I liked Lucas and Max as the hitch of the their respective friends for like the first few episodes, but then I felt like as it went on, it sort of just became like Lucas would say something and then Max would be like, and then they would just go on. So I'm looking forward to more
I love the spying scene with Elle and Mike, where she uses her powers for like maybe one of the first times to just do something nefarious like that. And she sees what they're talking about, and she just gets miffed and comes back.
And farting.
And they're burping and farting. All that private stuff of boys, you know what I'm saying? Of people in general, but definitely boys. You know, I love that kind of stuff, because it's like, you're in a relationship with Jean Grey, buddy.
I feel like agents in Hollywood are starting to catch on that if their client has a role on Stranger Things that starts with a B, that they should not plan for long-term employment. Because season 1 we had Barb, season 2 we have Bob, season 3 now Billy is gone. Billy went from the hot lifeguard to the cold villain of the season. Would you?
I thought this was the good use for him, because even in season 2, he was the character that I was like, you're a lot.
Yeah.
You know, like, okay. He was my Arnold. In season 2, where I was like, wow, okay. Like, are you gonna go beat the shit out of Ralph Macchio in a minute? Like, Jesus. Not even part 1 Macchio. Like, are you gonna go beat up part 3 Macchio? Like, you are a whole bunch. So I thought this was the good use for him. I think that character was so over the top, just like, I've seen some shit and now I'm broken. Like that, I don't think a normal redemption arc, getting on the same page with Steve Harrington, like that wouldn't have worked. I think, that guy, he's very easily hateable anyway. So I think the only bit of audience sympathy I think you're going to get is the arc of, can he overcome bad guy? And you know, the walking through his brain and seeing the abusive dad and the mom leaving and stuff like that. It's very on the nose, but so is he.
Did you notice
that
how,
character's one big nose
Did you notice
that you're
how,
on?
Yeah. Inside his mind looked exactly like the Snyderverse. Did you notice that?
Oh wow! I thought we were going
Release the
Inception.
Billy cut?
Yeah.
Release the
Release the
Billy
Billy
cut.
I
It
did
was
not
just-
notice that.
It was just so red and
very orange and red, yeah.
smeared and stormy.
Yeah. Why
I was
did you say that name?
Damn. Why'd you
Wow,
say
things
that?
floating in the air. Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not notice that. That's very true. Well, Billy will not be joining us for season 4 unless part of him became a slug or something. I don't know. We'll see. But the big death, of course, Hopper. Well, death question mark. We'll see. It appears that Hopper is definitely considered dead, believed dead. He was next to a big exploding spinning machine. That was I liked how they played that moment between him and Joyce.
Yes,
Just
yes.
the fact that you don't need to say a big goodbye. This idea of
Just him nodding.
they both know what's likely to happen here, but there's no body.
Yeah.
No
And
body has been seen, and
We
we
didn't
know,
see him disintegrate. We did see the Russians. They pointedly did not show him.
and the Russians have the American,
Yep.
which I
Well, first
don't
of
know
all,
who that is.
they tricked me. Because normally in a movie where someone has a movie or a show where someone has their big, we both just got everything we want scene, I go, well, they're dead.
Yeah.
And they tricked me. Because I love them both so much that I never in my wildest dreams would I expect anything bad to happen to them. So they went through their let's go to Enzo's scene without raising a hair on the back of my neck.
like Will Byers.
Yeah,
Your hair stands up when you think someone's about to die.
Yeah, normally that's what I have, and they got past it somehow with me, and so. Yeah, then the moment, the moment he throws the guy in the thing and the little light show starts, I was like, oh no. Yep, son of a bitch. Are they? Yeah, so it hit me at just the right moment where I was like, okay, time to start saying goodbye to like one of my favorite characters in the past couple years of pop culture. I think he's in the Upside Down, though. I think he jumped into the portal.
Oh,
And
who do the Russians have then?
I have no
They have
idea.
The American.
No
I
clue.
think the Russians have Brenner, Matthew Modine's character,
Oh.
who season 2
They
they
said was
said
alive.
he's alive, and then
Nice.
they never mentioned him in season 3. And so it's like
Interesting.
that is a huge plot thread to leave never unanswered.
Certainly.
Yeah.
For her to be told he's alive. So that is who I think is.
So do you
is
think?
in-
Let's take a vote. Who here thinks that Hopper is actually dead?
Okay, I guess I'll raise my hand half because I think that they can do the thing where I feel like I think Harbor will be Harbor has Hopper will be in the next season. But I feel like they could do something where it's like he's in a state between life and death. Like they could do something. I don't think it's as simple as he's in the Upside Down, even though he also might be the Upside Down. It's like I will tell you this: Netflix sent a scary giant list of things that we were embargoed on to talk about when they sent screeners of this early, and it very pointedly said, "Do not reveal the death of Billy, the death of Alexei, the fate of Hopper." Which was interesting thing for them to say.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I think Hopper. I guess Hopper will be in the show again in some form, is what I think. But I don't know. But you guys, I feel like they did such a good. They actually made it a good death, and then it was very emotional. All the aftermath and his letter and all that. It was so.
that's-
They did a lot there that I don't want to.
I love
to be
Hopper.
undone.
I
Yeah.
agree. I love Hopper so much, even though at times, like I said, he played it at a 27. But I do think if they bring him back, it retroactively robs the end of the season of every shred of emotional
on a
resonance. So I
writing-
don't think you. I
on
think
a
it's
writing
cheap to bring him
creative
back.
side, I think he's gone. But on a emotional, I just really love Hopper, and that side of me is like, no, he's definitely like floating around in the Upside Down, or he's in that weird purgatory or something.
Well, Paul
because
Reiser was scowling at something.
Yeah, but that's why I feel
Yeah.
like that's why I feel like if they know, and I hope they do, that like we can't completely undo this huge emotional thing we did, then maybe that's why he's like in this state of in between next season that still ends with him like accepting his death and moving on, rather than like he will come back and by the end of season 4 he's like back with
If he
them,
is,
you know?
he's not going to casually come back. I think in whatever. again, it depends on what the next season, if it's like a new volume or whatever, if it is just straight up this group coming back together. The death and return of Hopper is their death and return of Superman, and it's going to take a season, maybe 2 seasons.
Right.
Like, it's going to be the long game is earning, bringing Hopper back so that the end of the season doesn't feel cheap.
Let me ask a very practical and very cynical question. Netflix is cutting back their costs. They've just announced that they're going to be more, well, reportedly, although they themselves are denying it through their corporate arm, but there's been reports that they have sort of set a new policy of like, we are not just going to heedlessly throw money at everything anymore. We're going to be a little smarter. Do you think that perhaps there was a bit of a push for them to say, this is a very expensive show. We spare no expense, which is another line they lifted, I think, in this season, right? I think somebody said spare no expense. I don't remember. Maybe not. I'm getting it mixed up. I watched a lot this weekend. But the idea that I'm sure that the kids are getting more expensive as every season goes on. I'm sure that Winona Ryder probably commands a very hefty price. You're expanding as far as the cast goes. I wonder if perhaps there was a request or some kind of thing just saying like, we need to lose a salary. We need to cut the cost a little bit. Like, you know, perhaps would you consider? I just wonder if that weighed in at all.
I just feel like Netflix. I mean, I guess I would say possibly, and that's just because that's the way Netflix operates. Like everything we hear about them is they are so just numbers oriented and just like they are such sort of cutthroat in that way. And again, I'm sure Stranger Things is going to get a 4th season. You know, unlike all these other shows when they're 3 and done, it's like this is their flagship show right now. This is the show getting like all these like theme park tie-ins and merchandise that looks to be really selling. So they're not just going to end it. But I also could see them, even though the Duffers are like, oh, we see this being like a 4 or 5 season thing. I see Netflix also saying like, yeah, we do too because of all the reasons you just said. Like because salaries, one of the reasons they cancel shows after 3 seasons is because all the salaries go up after season 3.
Yeah.
But I do think it was you, Joe, said something earlier about like they might also be thinking in the back of their mind, but there could be a sequel series. So there might only be 1 or 2 more seasons of Stranger Things with this cast, but we can hire people much cheaper, you know, in a couple years.
Nancy and Jonathan.
PIs.
But
you know, just recast like Lorenzo Lamas as
because I'm curious about that.
It's Hopper.
Lorenzo Lamas as Hopper.
He rolls up on his motorcycle, whips his ponytail. Hey, it's me back from the upside down.
The Russians put me in a new body. Or it's just actually Lorenzo Lamas as himself in that cell. And that's who they're referring to.
I like that. He's the American. Ironically,
I'm curious. You know, I'm curious about that policy though, because I, on one hand, I'm like, yeah, probably, but then, man, that the jukebox around this show, like, makes me also curious about that logic.
But
they
that's
took
why
a
they're
lot
going
of money from Burger King.
That's true. Maybe Burger King paid for the jukebox.
But see, that's why they're going to Russia next season, because maybe they listen to cheaper music.
Well, there will definitely. I think next season, if that is the case, they are definitely sponsored by Levi's, and there will just be constant. Sort of rebellious young teen communists in the background, like, we're having a Western party. Here's your jeans. And we're throwing out jeans.
Well, there are 2 things I want to mention about Russia. We're going to close on one of them. But the first is if they go to Russia, or whoever goes to Russia, they're going to have to deal, because they now somehow have a Demogorgon.
Right.
Where'd they get it? How's it going to play? We saw Demogorgon cage.
Yeah.
Did the Russians perhaps delve further into the Upside Down than we thought? Or did it just sort of pop out at the other end of that other machine that didn't work?
That ending surprised me only because, I thought that it makes sense. You're doing an 80s show, Cold War era, that you'll do like the Russians, but I thought maybe for a season. But the ending is like, oh no, we're going to keep going with like the Russians as part of the storyline. I think that was interesting in that it must mean, okay, like, they closed the gate again at the end of the season, but they'd already been doing stuff in there, you know, they'd already gotten a Demogorgon out. And again, that's why I think, but I feel like that's why it probably is Brenner too, because that allows you to tie it all back together more directly with like the original Hawkins Lab and what, they're forcing him to work for them or something, something like that.
They don't quite have the mastery of it the way that the Americans had no mastery of it. Don't get it twisted, but they seem to have more stable mastery of opening up the gate and doing stuff with it than these dudes seem to have, the Russians.
I just kept, and because it just came out, but every time like their gate exploded or got screwed up, I was like, Chernobyl! Like I kept going to that.
But no, you know what I was thinking also? I don't think we have definitive proof that everybody who gets zapped out of existence by the energon cubes that come out of this machine, I don't. Maybe those people are indeed teleported somewhere, maybe through the upside down as like a warp to other places, and they pop up other places. So like,
That's interesting.
homeboy, he gets flashed out of existence, and everybody dies around him. But guess who else? All those Russian dudes who died and him show up at that base, pop it out, and they're just like, oh man,
That's
this is
interesting.
terrible.
Yeah.
And they grab him up and they throw him in the cell. If they did that, I'd be like, that's interesting, because now it's like it opens up all these different possibilities, because maybe the Russians are like, not only are we going to go through the upside down to get a bunch of monsters to kill the Americans, why don't we just pop these monsters up in the White House,
Yeah.
and do something weird like
that's
that.
interesting too, because with how well they were able to evacuate, it's like was there more going on? Again, like we saw that they already have a Demogorgon, like, so obviously they were pretty successful opening something and pulling stuff out. So like, did they figure out how to use that weird psionic purgatory to move and get out back to Russia? Because it's pretty quick. You don't see American soldiers pouring in and shooting people. Like they're gone. Like they ghost really quick. How they get out? I don't think that's plot. I don't think that's a plot hole. I think that's sort of an interesting.
It's a plot
question.
wormhole.
How much do you think Paul Reiser got paid for his silent cameo?
Dude, I think a lot, because okay, you're only going to use you for one day. All right, what am I doing? I'm being mad about you. I'm being cool. I'm talking to Joyce. What am I doing? No. We're going to throw a bunch of water in your face and
look
win
dramatic
for hours to get a 2-second shot. He's like, all right, well, then my rate just doubled.
I used to get paid $1 million per episode for mad about you.
You're going to frown at a wall is what you're going to do, Paul Reiser, and you're going to be great at it because he was. Okay, so we should end on this, and I think it's fitting. Perhaps the breakout character of this season, and this is the season where they killed Hopper.
Yeah.
Maybe the saddest death for me, and you could see it coming about 10 seconds before, and you're like, no, was our favorite cherry slurpee loving Russian, Alexei.
Alexei.
Yeah.
He was so happy with his Woody Woodpecker thing that he won off of these rigged games, and yet the Terminator.
Got
My
my
favorite character, my least favorite character killed my favorite new character.
It was this great moment
grim.
of, and what's the conspiracy guy's name?
About Murray. Paul
Murray.
And I will say, I really like Murray. And just a note on that. I'm sorry, I don't have any names in my head right now, and I apologize. I saw him for the first time on the show Another Period, and he was very much like a comedian trying to act. And I was like, okay, you're fine with this. But then through Stranger Things and through Fleabag, I think he's just come into his own so well as an actor, and I really enjoyed him as well. But yeah, just that moment of Alexei, it's not rigged. Like the American dream really is what I wanted it to be.
Exactly. I was watching him on television, and now I have my
Killed on the 4th of July.
Killed on Independence Day. That's something. This show that we saw it with Barb and the first season. The show has a way of taking what could be a forgettable side character and just through the writing, and I think largely because they're surrounded by other likable characters, they become beloved and then ruthlessly snatched away from it.
This show does really good deaths in general. Like, and this season, I was thinking, of course, Bob last season, but then this season, I was like, Alexei, I did think Billy's death was well done, and had the most emotion you could get out of that character. And then Hopper, we don't know for 100% he's died, but it certainly felt very powerful and emotional. So in general, Alexei being a great example. It's like, oh wow, they get me every time with their deaths. So
and not just the deaths, but the show does a great reminder of. It does such a good job of allowing you to forget how actually brutal it is, because you like the kids, you like the world, we're having fun. Nope, here's a brutal thing. Here's Barb's body with like a worm crawling out of its mouth, or here's Billy getting just murdered by a weird graboid.
From a blown up rat human hybrid monster.
Yeah, exactly. Or even Alexei, like here's a guy just getting brutally shot in the street. Like I completely forgot that the show even has blood in it, and now somehow, because I was just trapped in the magic, and now here we go again.
Murray was getting them corn dogs. It was
I
going to be a
know.
nice night at the fair for everybody. And it didn't work
yeah.
out. But Alexi, R.I.P., the newest breakout character.
Pour a cherry Slurpee out.
Pour
for
out
the
some cherry
homies.
Slurpees for
Alexi.
Justice for Alexi. Guys, we've done over an hour on Stranger Things. I feel like we can do more. It's a dense, fun show. I thank you for joining this panel to discuss it. Let us know in the comments below what you thought of Stranger Things Season 3. But before you do that, there's some really cool Stranger Things related stuff that you can see right now on fandom.com. First of all, Kim Taylor Foster wrote an article about the fan reaction. Fans are in tears over Stranger Things 3.
Culled from the fandom community, so we kind of looked at all the responses that the season is getting and what people think about it.
And then Donna Dickens wrote a really interesting article called "The Real Life Inspiration for Hawkins' Shadow Organization."
Yeah, that's it's funny actually because we're talking about Brenner coming back, and there's some dialogue about Brenner's history and the organization he worked for, and that's a real organization that has known as a conspiracy thing in the 70s. So we kind of look at how they pulled from that and how it kind of influenced what we see on Stranger Things.
You can check all that out. Those links are in the description below. You can also check us out every day here on Fandom Entertainment. We'll be back tomorrow talking about probably mermaids and stuff. Who knows?
We do.
Mermaids,
we'll be out of the Upside Down. Eric Goldman. Anything you want to plug? Where can people find you?
You can also find me besides fandom.com. You can listen to the We Enjoy Wrestling podcast if you enjoy wrestling or enjoy people talking about wrestling and other random things.
Awesome. Ed Greer?
Oh yeah, you can follow me at Ed Greer Destroys on Instagram. I do lots of cool art, and on Twitter at Ed Greer Destroys. Also, you can check out my podcast, the Nerd Goat podcast. We just do deep dives on people's favorite fictional characters. We've had several Screen Junkies on, including my man Joe Starr, and even Ryan. Ryan did a great episode, a highly rated episode
See, it's
about Captain America.
It's getting even worse for me not to be on the show.
It is.
Literally everyone will have been on
We're
the show.
circling you like gold pieces. We're gonna get you, baby. But yeah, please check that out. It's not just me rambling. I have a great co-host, Ron Swallow, and I have a brilliant producer, Bill, and they really keep it smart and on point. And then I come in with my craziness. But it's a really good show, and our Patreon is popping. It's going well, and thank you guys for helping that certainly.
Yeah.
Nerd Goat podcast. Joe Starr.
Hi. I don't know quite what all our details are, but come say hi at Comic-Con.
Yes, we will be making public, I think probably this week, but certainly next week, because Comic-Con is next week.
we better.
Exactly what we'll be doing at Comic-Con. We have a panel and all that fun stuff.
Yep.
We're going to get all those details out to you. Later today, Charting with Dan, I'll be back with Lon Harris or whoever I can grab in the office that's not busy to talk about Spider-Man and all that stuff. And don't forget that Honest Trailer Commentaries is moving this week.
Thank you.
It moves to Wednesdays at 10 a.m. over on the Screen Junkies channel. It won't be on this Fandom Entertainment channel anymore. It'll be on the Screen Junkies channel. We're moving it to a day later so that we can have the trailer come out. Everybody can watch it. We can get feedback and hear what people have to say. Sometimes we make mistakes. We can talk about that on the show. So Honest Trailer Commentaries is moving to Wednesdays, 10 a.m. on the Screen Junkies channel starting this week. It's a big trailer this week, though. I think it's going to generate a lot of discussion. So I think we picked a good week to move the stuff around.
I like it.
We'll just be reminding you of that all week. And thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. Until next time.